The man with dishwater hands restaurant on Willow Street looked perfect from the outside. Soft lighting glowed through tall windows. People lined up at the entrance every weekend. Couples took pictures under the gold-lettered sign that read, Alma. It was one of the most talked-about places in the city, an upscale kitchen with 5-star reviews, celebrity mentions, and a reservation list months long. Nobody knew Keanu Reeves owned it. Not even the head chef. Keanu had invested quietly years ago under a trust name. He didn't want attention or credit. He just wanted to support a space that brought people together through good food and respect. The concept was supposed to be about family, kindness, and second chances, especially for workers who'd had a hard life. But something wasn't right anymore. Keanu had heard whispers. A delivery driver left crying. A dishwasher quit without notice. A letter arrived unsigned, saying, They call it Alma, but it has no soul. Keanu didn't want to believe it, but he also couldn't ignore it. So one rainy morning, he walked into his own restaurant, not as an owner, not as a celebrity, just a man in worn jeans and a hoodie, asking if they needed help in the kitchen. The hostess didn't recognize him. She gave him a clipboard. You're here for the part-time dishwasher job? Keanu nodded. Back entrance, no phones. Report to Chef Ramsay. He entered through the side door, stepping into a world of clanging pans, shouted orders, and steam rising from stovetops. The kitchen was busy, but not joyful. The air was tense. Sharp, he found Chef Ramsay near the main prep table. Tall, sharp voice, spotless white jacket, eyes like glass. You the new help? Ramsay asked. Yes, sir, Keanu replied quietly. Don't call me sir. Call me chef. Now scrub those pans, or get out. Keanu nodded and walked to the sink. He didn't argue. He didn't reveal who he was. He just put on rubber gloves and began to wash. His hands moved slowly at first, feeling the grease, the heat, the weight of old sauce caked on cast iron. It had been years since he'd done this kind of work, but he found peace in it. The water was hot, the soap smelled like lemons, and the dishes never judged him. An older woman stood beside him. Her name read Luz. They warned me not to talk to anyone, she whispered without looking at him. But you look kind. Keanu gave a soft smile. You okay? Luz hesitated. Depends on the day. Chef Ramsay yells if we breathe wrong. Threw a plate last week, hit Marco in the leg. Keanu's eyes darkened, and no one reported it. Who would listen? We're just the back of the house, invisible. Keanu kept scrubbing, but his jaw clenched. Over the next few hours, Keanu saw everything. A server got scolded in front of the entire kitchen for dropping a spoon. A prep cook was told she'd lose her shift if she didn't move faster. Someone dropped a hot pan on the floor. No one helped. Chef Ramsay ruled with fear, but no one fought back. They couldn't. They needed the job. Keanu said nothing, but inside, something was building. At the end of his shift, Keanu clocked out and walked past the alley where Luz stood smoking. You coming back tomorrow? She asked. Double quotes. Yes, he said. If they'll have me. She nodded. You're quiet, but your eyes see everything. That night, Keanu sat in his small rental apartment just 2 blocks away. He didn't stay in his mansion, didn't bring security. He wanted to live as close to the worker's reality as he could. He stared at a blank notepad and began writing. Day 1, silence hides monsters, but it also hides heroes. He would stay, he would work, and he would watch, because the soul of the restaurant, the soul of what he built was being stolen, and he was going to take it back. Quietly. What Chef Ramsay didn't know was that the man he barked at today was the very man who could end everything he stood on. Not with anger, but with truth and kindness, and something Chef Ramsay didn't understand yet, patience. The smell of burned trust. Next morning, the kitchen was even louder. The prep table was covered in half-chopped vegetables, pots clanged without rhythm, and the tension hung thick like smoke from the stove. Chef Ramsay moved like a storm, shouting orders, correcting mistakes, and humiliating anyone who hesitated. Keanu Reeves returned wearing the same hoodie and faded jeans. He clocked in quietly and headed toward the sink. No one knew who he really was. To them, he was just another worker with calloused hands and silent eyes. But every plate he rinsed and every broken voice he heard added to the story he was building. Luz nodded at him when he stepped up beside her. "You came back," she said, half surprised. "You too." Keanu replied softly, "I don't have a choice." Keanu didn't respond. He just passed her a pan she couldn't reach and returned to scrubbing. But behind them, Chef Ramsay's voice pierced the air. "Marco, you call that a julienne? My grandmother could slice better with her eyes closed." Marco was 23. He had been working at Alma for 6 months. His hands shook slightly as he tried to correct the cut. "Sorry, Chef," Marco muttered. Chef Ramsay walked over, snatched the cutting board, and slammed it into the trash. "Start over. And don't waste my time with your excuses." Everyone froze for a moment. Then they went back to work. Keanu watched and listened. During break, Keanu sat outside by the delivery ramp. Luz joined him with 2 paper cups of coffee. She handed him one. "You don't talk much," she said. "I'm listening." "To what?" "The truth." She looked away. "We all need this job. Chef knows it." "What about the manager?" "Manager's his cousin. Reports to him. No use complaining." Keanu nodded slowly. Then he asked, "What would you change first, if you could?" She stared into her coffee. "Respect," she whispered. "I don't need roses or medals. Just someone who sees me." That night, Keanu returned to his rented apartment. He took off his gloves and opened his notebook. Day 2, in a place where no one looks up. It takes courage just to stand straight. He made a list. Chef Ramsay's behavior, hostile. Abusive management response, none. Staff morale, low. Incidents witnessed. For complaints, 0. Out of fear, trust level, broken. Closed the notebook. He looked around the quiet apartment. It wasn't much, but it was real. Just like the people in that kitchen. The following days continued like this. Chef Ramsay shouted. Workers flinched. Keanu watched. On day 5, a young woman named Tasha, barely 19, forgot to wipe a counter. Chef Ramsay made her stand in front of the staff. While he listed her mistakes, she didn't cry, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. After the shift, Keanu found her in the storage room, sitting on an overturned milk crate, breathing too fast. "You okay?" he asked gently. "Do I look okay?" "You don't have to let him talk to you like that." "You knew or just stupid?" she snapped. "We do, unless you've got another job lined up for me." Keanu sat down beside her. "Maybe you deserve better," she scoffed. "Deserve doesn't mean anything when you're broke." He didn't argue. He just sat with her until her breathing slowed. Back in his apartment, Keanu opened his notebook again. Day 5, they don't ask for kindness. They ask not to be broken. On day 6, something changed. Chef Ramsay received a private call. After he returned, he looked tense, paranoid. For the first time, his voice cracked when shouting at a prep cook. Keanu knew why. He had made that call the night before, not as the dishwasher, but as the owner. He called the legal team managing the property. Requested internal audit access and triggered the start of a quiet investigation. But Keanu didn't want just legal justice. He wanted truth. Transformation. So he stayed and worked. And listened. Because he knew something Chef Ramsay did not. When people are pushed too long, they break. Or they rise. And this kitchen was full of people who were ready to rise. They just didn't know it yet. On the 7th day, Luz handed Keanu a folded napkin as she left her shift. Inside was a note. "I don't know who you are, but something tells me you were sent here for a reason. Thank you for seeing us." Keanu tucked the note into his pocket. And for the first time since he'd arrived, he smiled. The kitchen revolt that never spoke. In day 8, the sun didn't rise gently. A storm rolled in early. Thick gray clouds rumbling over the city, soaking the sidewalks and clattering rain against the windows of Alma. The kitchen lights flickered once, then steadied. But the tension inside the restaurant had nothing to do with weather. It was the day everything began to shift. Not loudly. But deeply. Keanu stood at the sink again, sleeves rolled up, working in silence. But his mind was not quiet. He watched the kitchen like a movie unfolding in front of him. He saw Marco cut slower than usual. Tasha dropped a spoon and didn't pick it up for a full minute. Luz moved slower, her eyes dimmer. The team was starting to fall apart. but not out of laziness. Out of exhaustion. Out of being unseen. Chef Ramsay entered just before noon, slamming the back door and barking, "Get your heads on straight or don't bother coming in." His coat was soaked, but he didn't care. He barked orders, cursed at delays, slammed his hand on the prep table when an appetizer came out late. Then he turned toward Tasha. "You messed up the plating again. Are you proud of being useless?" Tasha froze. The entire kitchen stopped. Even Luz dropped her spoon. Keanu stepped forward quietly. His hands were wet, dripping soap. "That's enough," he said, calm but firm. Chef Ramsay turned. "You talk to me, dishwasher." Keanu nodded slowly. "Yes, someone has to." The kitchen went silent. Chef Ramsay stepped closer. "You want to lose your job, hero?" Keanu held his ground. "No, but I won't stand by while you tear people down. This is how kitchens work." Ramsay growled. "If you can't handle the heat, get out." Keanu didn't respond. He just picked up another dish and started scrubbing again. The room buzzed again, but something had cracked. Later that night, Luz pulled Keanu aside. "Why did you stand up like that?" "Because she needed someone to." "He'll come after you. Let him." Luz hesitated, then handed him a folded piece of paper. "Read it when you're alone," she whispered. Back at his apartment, Keanu opened the paper. It was a list of names. 10 names. Each with short notes next to them. Marco, cut by flying plate. Jules, quit after screaming match. Sam, burned, no medical leave. Dylan, pushed, sprained wrist. Angelica, cried in dry storage. Rami, worthless comment. Carla, tip stolen. Tasha, humiliated. 3x. Evelyn, walked out, never came back. Luz, broken trust. Keanu stared at it. A silent revolt, written not in screams, but in memory. The next day, Keanu made a decision. He showed up 2 hours early. He brought donuts, not fancy ones. Just warm, soft, honest food. He handed them out without saying much. One by one, the kitchen crew took them. No one said thank you, but their eyes did. Then Keanu posted something on the staff corkboard, just above the time clock. It was a question. What would you change if you could? A marker sat on a string beside it. At first, no one touched it. Then Tasha wrote, "No yelling." Marco added, "Respect." Luz wrote, "See us." The next day, the board had 15 answers. The day after that, 20-3. No one signed their names, but the voices were real. And Chef Ramsay, he never noticed. He walked past the board every shift without looking. On day 10, something bigger happened. A man in a suit entered through the front door and asked to see Chef Ramsay. His name was Elias. He was part of the legal audit team Keanu had quietly activated behind the scenes. He said he was there for a kitchen standards review. Ramsay rolled his eyes. "Tell the dishwasher to mop the floor and stop inviting strangers." Keanu overheard it. Elias winked at him before heading into the office. The review lasted 2 hours. When Elias emerged, he shook Keanu's hand and whispered, "You're not alone. We see it." Keanu nodded. He didn't want revenge. He wanted truth. And truth was coming. That evening, Luz handed Keanu another small envelope. This time, it was from Tasha. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper, handwritten, "I almost quit this week. You reminded me I have worth. Thank you." At the bottom, she had drawn a tiny sunflower. Keanu held the paper close to his chest. In his apartment, Keanu wrote again in his notebook. Day 10. Pain turns quiet when it feels ignored. But kindness grows in silence, like roots under the ground. He closed the book and stared at the wall. The plan was working, but the end wasn't near yet. Not until every voice was heard. As the kitchen prepared for its busiest night of the month, a VIP dinner with big names and local press, Chef Ramsay had no idea that the man he had called a nobody for 10 days was about to speak with a voice louder than any he'd ever heard. And it would come not through yelling, but through truth. And choice. The dinner that changed everything Friday night came like a storm wrapped in gold. Alma was packed. Outside, sleek black cars lined the curb. Inside, candles flickered on every table. Photographers hovered at the edges, hoping to catch a glimpse of a celebrity. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that one of the most famous men in the world was already inside. Keanu Reeves stood in the back kitchen, wearing his dish gloves, apron damp, eyes calm. This wasn't just another shift tonight. Everything would come to light. Chef Ramsay was in rare form. Barked orders, cursed delays, insulted plating, and slammed silverware onto trays. He didn't care who was in the dining room. He never did. This is the most important night of the month, he shouted. Mess up, and you're done. He didn't see Tasha wince, didn't notice Luz rub her wrist, didn't care that the new prep cook hadn't eaten all day. But Keanu noticed. He saw everything. He always had. At 6:45 p.m., the first wave of VIP guests arrived. At 7:15, a well-known journalist began tweeting about the electric energy in Alma's kitchen. At 7:30, the mayor entered with his wife. Chef Ramsay smiled for the first time all week, only when shaking the mayor's hand. Through the pass window, Keanu stood silently in the corner, drying a clean plate. He wasn't smiling. He was waiting. At 7:50 p.m., the restaurant lights dimmed slightly. Soft piano music played. The servers moved in perfect rhythm. On the surface, Alma looked like perfection. But beneath the plates and polish, something was about to break. Chef Ramsay turned and screamed at Marco, who dropped a ladle by mistake. "You worthless little..." But this time, Marco didn't flinch. He stood tall. And Keanu stepped forward. His gloves came off. His voice rose, not loud, but clear. "Enough." The kitchen froze. Chef Ramsay spun around. "Excuse me?" Keanu took off his apron. Then slowly reached into his back pocket. He pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He opened it. And began reading aloud. One by one, he listed the names from Luz's note. The injuries, the insults. The silence, the fear. He read them slowly. No drama. No performance. Just truth. Then he stepped forward, pulled out a lanyard hidden beneath his shirt, and held up the keycard with the restaurant's ownership seal. Gasps echoed. "Who are you?" Chef Ramsay demanded, voice cracking. Keanu looked him in the eye. "I'm the man who built this place, and you've been tearing it apart with every word you've spoken." The staff was silent. The kitchen still. Then Luz dropped her ladle and stepped forward. "He's telling the truth." Marco followed. "We've all been scared." Tasha's voice shook, but not anymore. One by one, the staff stepped toward Keanu. Behind them, the walls didn't crumble, but the truth did. Chef Ramsay stood alone. Eyes wide, sweat on his brow. He turned toward the servers. Even they stepped back. The guests didn't know what was happening behind the doors, but inside that kitchen, a quiet revolution had begun. Keanu looked at Chef Ramsay. This kitchen was meant to be a place of second chances, a place of healing. You turned it into something toxic. Ramsay stammered. "You think this place runs on hugs?" "No," Keanu said softly. "It runs on people." He turned to the staff. "You don't work for him anymore. Effective immediately, Chef Ramsay is removed from all operations." No one cheered. No one clapped. They just stood in stillness, realizing they were free. Ramsay threw off his coat. "You'll regret this," he muttered. Keanu looked him in the eye. "No, I regret not doing it sooner." Ramsay stormed out the back door. That night, the kitchen still cooked. Luz stepped up to lead. Marco plated with care. Tasha smiled for the first time in weeks. And Keanu? He put the gloves back on and washed every last dish. Not because he had to, but because kindness leads by example. After the rush, the staff gathered in the dining room. Keanu stood at the center. "This place belongs to all of you," he said. "From today, we build it together. No more fear, no more silence." He looked around. "Who wants to help me start over?" Hands went up. Tears fell. And for the first time in a long time, Alma had soul again. The kindness Maynooth sun rose quietly over Alma the next morning. Inside, the restaurant smelled not just of roasted coffee and warm bread, but of change. The kitchen felt softer, the footsteps slower. People moved with purpose, not pressure. Something invisible had broken loose from the walls the night before, like air returning after being held in too long. KeanuReeves arrived just before opening. Not through the front door with reporters or cameras, but through the side entranceware. The workers came in, the door with the chipped paint and the creaky hinge. He carried a tray of fresh pastries and a box of handwritten thank you cards. He had stayed up all night writing them. Each staff member had one. Luz, Tasha, Marco, even the janitor, who swept quietly after closing. Each card said one simple thing: you matter more than what you do. They didn't cry in front of him. But later, Luz kept her card folded inside her apron pocket. Marco taped his above his prep station, and Tasha, she framed hers. Not because it was from a celebrity. But because it was the first time anyone had ever thanked her without asking for something in return. The kitchen was now a place of trust. And slowly, Keanu helped build something new. He held open meetings each morning. Not speeches, just space. He asked, how can we make this better? The team answered, let's teach each other. More breaks. Staff meals that don't come from scraps. Respect on the floor, not just the menu. Keanu nodded. Done. He said, they called it the kindness menu. Not the food menu, but a set of values taped to the walk-in fridge door. Speak with honesty, lead with kindness, forgive loudly, celebrate, effort, notice. The quiet ones beneath it was a final line, in red. Marker, we fix what we didn't break because someone has to. 2 weeks later, Alma reopened to the public with a new policy. Customers weren't just paying for the food. They were supporting a staff that had come back from the edge. Every plate now came with a small card that read, this meal was made by someone who matters. Thank you for seeing them. Reviews poured in, but not about the food. About the feeling. One guest wrote, it's like eating inside a heartbeat. Another said, I came here expecting a chef's ego. I left remembering human grace. Keanu didn't give interviews. When asked by reporters about the chef scandal, he simply said, it wasn't about punishing someone. It was about protecting everyone else. And then he went back to the sink, still washing dishes, still listening, but something bigger was coming. Something Keanu had quietly planned behind the scenes with Luz and the team. A surprise. On the first day of the new month, the restaurant was closed to the public. Instead, Alma hosted a private dinner free of charge for former staff who had once left in silence. They called it the return table. Guests included Jules, who now worked in a bookstore. Angelica, who had once cried in dry storage and now owned a food truck. Even Evelyn, who had walked out one night after being told she wasn't fast enough, showed up in a soft blue dress. No cameras. No speeches. Just food. Connection. Healing. Luz sat beside Keanu at the long wooden table. They came back, she whispered. They always do, he replied, when they're invited. After dinner, the kitchen staff brought out one last dish, a simple cake with white icing and the words, thank you for seeing us. Keanu didn't cut the cake. He handed the knife to Tasha. She had once been the one yelled at in front of the whole kitchen. Now, she stood at the center with grace. She sliced the first piece and handed it to Keanu. He took it with both hands. You deserve this moment, he said. Tasha smiled. So do you. That night, Keanu walked the empty dining room alone. He touched the edge of a table, the corner of the bar, the frame of the new mural that had been painted by Marco's cousin, showing a quiet kitchen full of light, hands working together, a dishwasher in the background wearing a hoodie. Beneath it was a quote, the strongest voice is the one that lifts others. Keanu closed the restaurant that night. Not just the door, but a chapter. And the next one would be bigger. Because this wasn't just about Alma. This was about every workplace, every quiet worker. Every unseen hand. He knew there were more kitchens out there, more staff walking on eggshells. More pain behind aprons. And he was ready to keep going. With kindness. And silence. And strength that didn't need shouting. Asterisk. The quiet that fed the world. 3 months had passed since Keanu revealed himself as the silent owner of Alma. In that time, the restaurant had changed completely, not in appearance, but in soul. The same walls stood, the same tables, the same stovetops clattered with heat. But now, every corner of the kitchen carried warmth, laughter, and something deeper than praise. Dignity. Luz had been promoted to head of kitchen culture. Not a title people were used to, but it mattered. She made sure every voice was heard, checked in on tired hands, reminded the staff daily That they were more than just the food they served. Tasha, once humiliated, was now the new pastry lead. Her cinnamon bread brought people to tears. A food critic said, "This isn't dessert, it's memory." Tasha didn't care about reviews, but she kept the framed thank you note Keanu had written, hanging in her new prep corner. Marco trained the new hires. Every time someone dropped a ladle, he smiled and said, "You're learning. That's all that matters." And as for Keanu, he didn't disappear. But he stepped back, not because he was done, but because they were ready. Instead, he started something new, a program called Quiet Hands. It wasn't a charity. It was a movement. Keanu traveled quietly, visiting other restaurants, bakeries, cafes. Not to eat. But to observe. To listen. He looked for places where workers flinched at footsteps. Where managers spoke like kings, where fear lived behind the stove. And he offered help. Training. Support. A whisper of hope. And sometimes ownership. Quiet Hands helped over 40 businesses in the first year. Some changed overnight, others took time, but the core message remained: workplaces should not run on fear. They should breathe with kindness. One morning, Alma received a letter. It came from a small diner in a dusty town. The manager had heard about what happened in Alma's kitchen. He wrote, "We didn't know how broken we were until someone asked us to listen. We started with one rule: no shouting. Now we have a team, a family. Thank you for reminding us what we forgot." Keanu pinned the letter on the staff wall. Beside it, Marco added, "Kindness isn't a rule. It's a choice." A year later, Alma celebrated its anniversary, not of its founding, but of its becoming. They called it the day the silence ended. Keanu returned for the celebration. No red carpet. No press. Just family. The staff surprised him with a dish made by every team member. A bowl of warm soup from Luz's childhood. Pastries by Tasha. Fresh bread by Marco. Even Ty, a quiet new hire, brought a plate of his mother's lentils. When Keanu tasted it, he said softly, "This is what the world needs." During the celebration, a young woman approached him. She was shaking, holding a napkin. "You probably don't remember me," she said. "I used to work here, before the change." Keanu looked into her eyes. He remembered. "I was the girl who forgot the wine order once. Chef Ramsay screamed at me. I cried for 3 days. I never said goodbye." Keanu took her hand. "You're here now," he said. "That's what matters." They stood beside the kindness menu on the wall. She read the last line aloud. "We fix what we didn't break because someone has to." Then she whispered, "That was you." Keanu shook his head. "No," he said. "That was all of you." Later that night, Keanu stood alone in the kitchen one last time. He touched the handle of the old sink he had once stood behind, ran his fingers over the chipped tile. Closed his eyes and listened. Not to orders. Not to shouting, but to laughter. Dishes. CLINKING. Music playing from a portable speaker. Peace. He turned out the light and stepped into the cool night air. Outside, a group of staff walked past, heading home, arms around each other's shoulders. They didn't see him. But he saw them, and smiled, because in a world full of noise, sometimes it takes just one person to walk in quietly, put on gloves, and change everything. Not by shouting. Not by punishing, but by lifting, and showing that kindness is the loudest legacy of all.